Hello everybody, this is Scott from Nostalgic Nightmares, and welcome to my review of Shivers number 14, The Curse in the Jungle. I'm a little bit more relaxed today. Normally when I do these reviews, I'm talking about 100 miles an hour, because I'm trying to squeeze it in between doing other things. But today I have nothing planned, so I can finally just sit, relax and talk about this book, which I really enjoyed, which is giving away my rating at the end, but never mind. I did actually really enjoy this one. Even though I've only reviewed, this will be my fifth book in the Shivers series. This is the second one that takes place in the middle of a jungle. Well, one of my reviews for A Ghastly Shade of Green took place in the middle of the rainforest, which isn't the same as the jungle, but it's kind of similar. And the next Shivers book that I will be doing is called Camp Fear, and that takes place in the middle of the woods. So it just seems to happen that when I pick out these slips of paper, because when I choose a book to read, I've all the book titles in a cup on slips of paper, and I just pick out a piece of paper and read whatever's on there, unless something particular takes my fancy. So of the 6 Shivers books that I've read so far, about 3 of them take place in these kind of woody, jungly areas, which isn't common in the Shivers series. It's just that I seem to be picking out the ones that do take place in this kind of environment. Most of the rest of them, as far as I can tell, don't take place in these kind of, like jungles and things. But it just so happens that the ones that I'm reading do. But anyway, this book is 121 pages long, 27 chapters, and similar to my last review, I have no memory of this one as a kid, so I didn't walk into it with any kind of predetermined thoughts in my head. Like if you read a book when you were young and you loved it, then you're gonna go into it expecting something amazing, where I had no idea on this one. In some ways, I wasn't looking forward to reading this because I hadn't long read A Ghastly Shade of Green, which, like I said, takes place in the rainforest. So the fact that this was a jungle one as well was a little bit like, ugh, when I pulled out the slip of paper and I saw which one it was on the shelf. But you know what? I try and stick to what I pull out. I'm not going to lie, sometimes now and again I'll pull out a few and pick from that group. That's just when I'm being really, really, really indecisive. But I wasn't really looking forward to it because it was another jungle one, but I was pleasantly surprised. And in this review as well, I'm going to put some pictures on the screen every now and again. I'll mention it when I do, in case you just listen to the review and don't actually watch it, because it is just a blank picture on the screen or a picture of the cover. Because there are quite a few things that are mentioned in this book that I had no idea what they were, and quite a lot of exotic animals and things. So I'll get straight into it. This book mostly takes place in Guatemala, among the Maya Indian ruins of Tikal. For those who don't know what the Mayans are, they were a group of people that lived forever ago, like ages ago. They were the ones that kind of came up with the calendar. They invented the calendar as we know it today. They kind of revolutionised astronomy and dealt with crops, and they built all the temples and had their own language. I'll put some pictures on now, so you have an idea of what the Mayans look like, or at least what the temples look like, because they are really intriguing. So if you want to know a lot more about them, please go and read up on them, because they are an interesting topic of history. But this book mostly takes place amongst their ruins in the middle of the Guatemalan jungle. And the main character this time was a guy called Harry, and he goes to Guatemala because his parents are archaeologists, and they have been sent there to help with a dig amongst one of the not undiscovered temples, but various temples that are in the city have been like investigated a lot. I'm trying to think of my words here. Investigated quite a lot, so everyone knows exactly what's in there, all the tombs that are in there, all the remains of old Mayan people or emperors, whatever. But there are various tombs that haven't been discovered yet, or haven't been investigated yet, because there's so many of them and they're that massive that it does take a long time. But anyway, the parents have been called to investigate a specific one to help on with this research team, and they bring Harry along with him. But he's not really looking forward to going, because although he finds it interesting, he's going to be staying in a cottage in the middle of the jungle, similar to A Ghastly Shade of Green, and not really got a lot to do there because there's no electricity. And if you've ever been to these kind of environments, you know what it's like. It's just really hot, full of bugs, full of animals, snakes, insects, whatever. and there's not really a lot to do unless you're there for a very specific reason. But the parents have to go quite urgently because the rain season's coming, so they're calling on extra people to help with the dig to get it done before the rain comes in, and then there's nothing they can do whilst it's raining. And it mentions as well that all the locals aren't English, they're all descendants from the Mayans. So again, Harry's got no one to talk to, he's just there on his own. So one day he goes out exploring in the jungle, and it talks about all these various different animals that he sees. And this book actually paints a really good picture here of the jungle that he's walking through. What I really liked about this story was I got a really good impression of where he was. It talks about the heat and the humidity and the trees and the ground that he walks on, and the various different... He walks past toads, he walks past large cats, past toucans, past insects, snakes, you name it, monkeys. The author talks about all the different things that he can hear. So it paints a really good, clear scene of the fact that he is in this exotic location, which books don't, in this kind of genre, don't really do a lot. Sometimes they talk a little bit about it, they might mention an animal or two, but on the most part they kind of just go, it's hot, I can hear insects, that's it. But this kind of went into quite a lot of detail of all the various things that he saw and things that he could hear and the environment that he was in, so you get a really good idea of the atmosphere. And as he's going through these jungles and these animals, he ends up getting chased by howler monkeys. For those of you who don't know, howler monkeys are monkeys that scream very, very loudly. Or they're called howlers, but they're kind of more of a shriek. And it's a really scary sound, if you've ever heard it. Anyway, he runs away from these howler monkeys and he escapes from the jungle and gets home, where he's greeted by like a 5-foot snake, which the parents remove because they say it's not poisonous, it's just a big ass snake. And let me have a look. Yeah, they talk a lot more about the actual area that he's in and the temples that they're going to explore and the dig that they're involved in, and how the Mayans often buried themselves with jewels, with pottery, with special headdresses, particularly if you were like a Mayan king or an emperor. You would often be buried with like exotic dresses and fancy jewels, expensive jewellery and gems and diamonds and things like that. And there's a legend around these parts, that if you remove the skull or the jewels of a Mayan ruler, a curse is placed upon you. So it's very typical when you see any horror films or these kind of books, basically don't disturb the dead. It's a kind of legend that carries off across Egyptian mythology, Mayan mythology, and just in general, anyone that's of any importance tends to be, if you disturb their remains or try and steal anything they were buried with, you're going to have a curse placed upon you. And the curse is basically a bad luck, so a lot of bad things are going to happen to you. But various accidents happening around these here parts, and they're always put down to coincidence, because that's what scientists do. They don't believe in legends, they just believe in coincidences. And so it's next day, the parents go to work, and Harry goes exploring again in the jungle because he got scared off last time by the howler monkeys. And there's a couple of animals that I'll put pictures of now that are called tapir and peccaries that the author specifically mentioned that Harry sees. So the first picture that I'll put up is a tapir, or a tapir, I don't know how you pronounce it. And then the second one will be a peccary. I feel like I'm stumbling my words a lot today. The reason I'm putting these pictures up was because I had to Google them when I was reading the book, because I had no idea what he was talking about. They're not a big part of the book, he just mentions that he comes across them. And once again he gets chased by some sort of animal and ends up hiding in the trees. And for one reason or another he stumbles across what's called the Great Plaza. Now the Great Plaza is where tours happen, and it's kind of the central area amongst all these temples. So it's a big open area, there's no trees there, they're kind of on the outskirts, where you can see various different temples in the distance and nearby, and it's kind of the central hub of the whole place. So if you're going on tours, that's where the tour guides will start, and where they'll meet you and walk you around and all that kind of thing. So he joins a various group, just one that's having a tour at that moment in time, exploring some temples, and the tour guide talks about how some are undiscovered and no one's ever been inside them. So Harry gets a very smart idea that while he's there, he's going to go and try and find an undiscovered temple because, you know, kids in these books always make great decisions. Where am I looking? So he does a bit of research and he finds one called the El Mundo Perdido, which translates as the Lost World. And he basically decides that that's where he's going to go and explore. And he steals some equipment from his parents because they've got tons in, like, what am I talking about? Spare, not expert. They've got lots of spare equipment in the house that they're staying in. So he decides to steal some of that overnight, and then the next day he goes looking for El Mundo Perdido. And it's kind of off the beaten track. It's not where people go. There's no tourists around. He might see the odd one here, there, and there. But on the most part, he's kind of walking in a secluded area by himself. And often these temples were built over other temples, because I'll put a picture of the temples up now as well, so you have an idea what they look like. They look kind of like pyramids, but more of stone than the sandstone that the Egyptians use. And these temples are known for being like really hard to climb up because often they have like hundreds and hundreds of steps. Sometimes the steps aren't working, so you've got those massive steps on the outside. A lot of history that I could talk about for the Mayans, but say please go and investigate and explore online. Really interesting to learn. So yeah, often when the smaller temples had famous people buried inside, or they had no use for the temples anymore, they might build a bigger temple on top of that. So you have temples within a temple. Anyways, Harry's exploring for this particular one, and he finds it and he starts to climb up it. And he realises no one else is around, so he's in a bit of a good fortune really, because he can explore without any interruptions. And as he reaches the top of the temple, he kind of steps on something and falls through the roof, or the tip of the temple, whatever. He steps on something that's kind of not very strong, and he falls through, but lands on top of another temple, because like I say, there's temples within temples. And he notices inside this large area, there's various different temples in there, only smaller ones, but the one that he's landed on, I've got to say at this point as well, the only light he can see is the light coming from the bit that he's fallen through. It's really dark inside, because these temples don't really have like doorways and things, often. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It depends what they were built for and their purpose. But he falls through the roof of this temple, and when he lands on one, he starts to explore the one that he's on. Finds various rooms that are empty, there's nothing inside them. But one room in particular has got things like barricading the entrance. So he starts to remove the things that are blocking the way. And as he enters the room, he notices that there is a skeleton inside. So he sees that it's the remains of a Mayan king. And it talks about a fancy headdress that it's got on, a fancy jeweled necklace, and various like bits of tatty clothing that were there from years ago. And ignoring the curse, because it wouldn't be a book if we didn't ignore a curse, right? He decides to take the skull of the Mayan king, leaves the jewelry and stuff in the temple, just picks up the skull, puts it in his knapsack, and goes to leave because he decides that he's going to show his parents, and he might have made like a great discovery and become famous or rich or whatever. So that night he shows his parents a skull that he's found. Oh, I forgot to say, he leaves the temple he climbs down the temple that he's inside, and towards the bottom somewhere he finds some like loose rocks or whatever, and manages to kind of break through a wall. So he leaves at the bottom after falling through the top. That is important for later on. So he shows his parents the skull. They're really impressed because it's a temple that no one's explored so far. It's a Mayan king that no one's found the remains of, and Harry's the first one to find it. And they're really impressed, and they want to go and see it themselves. But the mum has to go to help out with the reason that they're there, the research job. But the dad finds time to come and look at the Mayan king and the undiscovered temples, the El Mundo Perdido. So the dad comes to the temple with him the next day, and they go through the entrance at the base of the temple that Harry created. And they're looking up the top of the temple at the ruins and the remains of the king. And Harry's dad admits, it's a really amazing discovery that you found, but there's not much we can do right now. At the end of the day, we've got a whole research team here doing something specific that's time limited because the storm's on its way. So his advice is just to kind of cover up what we've found, not in like a big conspiracy, like block the entrances, and we'll have to come and explore another time when it's more suitable, because right now there's not much they can do. because they've got other priorities and they've been hired for a specific reason, blah, 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 blah. Harry agrees and they start to climb down the temple. But as they climb down, Harry's dad slips and he falls, crashes to the bottom of the temple and hits his head really, really hard. And this is where the book kind of took like a kind of a scary thing, a scary turn, because often in these kids' books, when an adult gets injured, it might just cut forward to the next day or they're in hospital. You don't really see the in-between part. Whereas this has got Harry in the inside of an undiscovered temple, or an unexplored temple, sorry. His dad is unconscious on the floor after falling down God knows how far. Hit his head, he's unconscious. Harry has got no supplies to help him. The research team is quite far away, there's nothing they can do. And so it was quite like scary, not scary, but yeah, maybe scary is the right word to use, I'm not sure. Quite serious, because it doesn't just cut forward to, right, my dad's in hospital now. It's like, oh crap, what do I do? So he has no choice really but to leave his dad there and literally run as fast as he can through the jungle and try and find where his mum and the research team are. So he manages to find them, tells them what's happened, and they call for a helicopter, chase back through the jungle with Harry to take care of the dad, but then a helicopter comes, lands nearby, and they kind of struggle to get him out of the temple because the entrance is quite small. But they manages to airlift Harry's dad out and take him to the hospital. And they're all at the hospital later on, and basically Harry's dad just got into a coma. He's not waking up anytime soon. His head injury was so severe, he's just not going to wake up anytime soon. And there's a man there called Nevins, who's one of the research team that was working with the dad and the mum. And he kind of speaks to Harry and is like, why were you in this temple that's never been explored before? And scared that his discovery is going to get kind of took away from him and maybe other people will take credit for it. Harry just kind of lies and says, well, his dad was teaching him how to do some like digging and just teach me a little bit of archaeology, really, like nothing major, but we wanted to do it somewhere that was kind of undiscovered, unexplored is the word I need to start using. Let me just have a quick drink, my mouth's gone dry. Pardon me. So they have to leave Harry's dad at the hospital because there's nothing they can do for him. He's just in a coma. And it's difficult because, as you see in all these programs like ER, Grey's Anatomy, whatever, when people are in a coma, the family don't want to leave the side, but it's kind of one of those, there's nothing you can really do for them. So sitting there isn't helping, but they have to leave, the mum has to go back to work, and Harry goes back to the cottage, or shack, whatever they're staying in. There's a small bit that night where he finds something in his bed. It's like a scorpion that bites him. The next day, I think the mum takes care of the scorpion bite. The next day, there's still no change on the dad. The mum goes to work, so Harry goes to explore in the jungle again. And there's a really weird part where he tries to cross this pond. It's like a plank of wood that's over this pond that he wants to cross. So he walks across this plank of wood, but slips and falls in. It turns out to be quicksand, and he's fallen into it and can't get out, but these two boys appear that like lean over with a stick or something. He grabs it, they pull him out, and he realises they're like indigenous people, so they're dressed like locals or like Mayan descendants from like years ago. But he closes his eyes, they disappear. Nothing really happens much with that. He just kind of, there's this weird bit where these two people appear, save his life, and then disappear, as if they're kind of spirits. But as he travels back to his, what I'm going to call his home, his shack, his home for the time being in Guatemala, he sees that there's quite a lot of people inside the shack, so he kind of gets a bit nervous, thinking, oh, has the mum got guests there, what's going on? Is there news about the dad? And as he goes inside, he sees Nevins and some other people, but doesn't see anyone he recognises, as in like his mum. And he's like, what's going on? And they kind of sit him down and they go, we've got some bad news for you, Harry. Your mum was bitten by a snake called the fer de lance, which is one of the most poisonous snakes in the Guatemalan jungle. Again, I'll put a picture up on the screen. It's scary looking, but I don't like snakes. So the mum gets bitten by this poison snake, and she's in hospital now too, getting treated with anti-venom, and they're trying to save her life now. And due to the stress of what's going on, Harry faints. They go see the hospital. They go to hospital to see the parents, but there's nothing they can do at that moment in time. So again, they go back to the jungle. Nevins wants to stay with Harry, or wants him to stay at Nevin's place with his partner just so they can kind of keep an eye on him. But Harry's like, no, look, there's nothing you can do for me, I'm fine. I'll just stay here on my own because, I just need to kind of have some time to myself. If I feel like there's people like walking around me, I won't relax, just leave me alone. So, with everything that's happened, with the scorpion, the quicksand, the dad falling down the temple, the mum being bit by a snake, Harry realises that the curse is real. He took the skull and all this bad shit's happening to him, so he has no choice but to go and put the skull back because things are getting worse. His parents are like in hospital and they might die soon. If the sound went really loud, then it's because I was moving around and I moved towards the microphone, so I do apologise. Where am I, guys? My memory today is shocking. So Harry decides to go and put the skull back in the jungle, in the temple, because clearly the curse is real and that's why all this bad stuff is happening. Next day he goes towards the plaza, the Grand Plaza, and that's after visiting his parents again because he's a good child. And he's walking amongst his tour group because he wants to know if they mention the parents or a curse or anything like that. So he's amongst this tour group when, out of nowhere, armed bandits appear. This group of armed bandits, which are local people who, you might have seen it on films or whatever, when people go to like abroad, they get held at gunpoint by like locals who are often quite poor, and they hold them at gunpoint and take all the money, all the jewellery, whatever, anything that can help them get a bit more money, or they can sell it for drugs or guns or food even, depends on the criminal, so they're probably going to be like selling it for money and drugs and that. He's being held at gunpoint now, as well as all these other people who are giving up the jewellery and the bags and all that kind of stuff. But he knows that he can't give up his bag because the skull's in it, and he knows that if you take the skull, the curse is never going to be lifted. So he makes some sort of distraction and runs off into the jungle, where he gets chased through the jungle by these guys with guns, which are, I can't remember if they shoot at him or not. I just know that they chase him through the jungle, but anyway. And there's a bit where he hides and he's getting bitten by fire ants. And if you don't know what fire ants are, I'm not going to put a picture up because they're not very exciting to look at, but they're ants that literally, they swarm around you. And they bite like crazy. I've never had them on me, but in England we have a TV show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where various celebrities go into a jungle for a few weeks and they have to perform various trials, which often involve being like covered in fire ants and solving puzzles or whatever, or all these things with snakes, spiders being buried alive, loads of stuff like that. And they always use fire ants, and you can see like these thousands of fire ants crawling over them, and they're always like pinching, and you can tell by the reaction that it's like being on fire, but not to that level. They're called fire ants because I'm pretty sure they're red, but they bite and they sting a lot, and they get everywhere very quickly. So he's being bitten by fire ants, but he eventually gets away from the bandits and the ants and whatever, and goes back to the El Mundo Perdido. And as he enters the temple, he sees bats flying around. One of them poos on him, because naturally. And as he's climbing up the temple to get back to the king's room, part of the temple starts to crumble beneath his feet, but he manages to kind of get back up to the top anyway. And he replaces the skull. He puts it back in there amongst the ruins and the headdress and all that kind of stuff. He puts it all back. And he does spot the pendant that the Mayan King was wearing around his neck, which was like in the shape of a vulture, and it's got this like really bright jewels on it. And he says he really wants it because it's a really pretty item, it's a really fun item. It's one that he'd like as a souvenir, but he decides to leave it there because, curses. And as he gets back to the shack, he is told that his parents are actually getting better now. The dad's come out of the coma, the antivenom's working on the mum. They're getting a lot better, so they should be home in the next day or so. And again, that night he has to be left on his own because he's happy now, the curse is over, parents are getting better. Fantastic. But the book is not over yet, guys. It's not over yet. That night he's sleeping and he hears something in the cabin that he's in. Cabin. That's the word I was looking for the whole review. Cabin. I keep calling it a shack. And I'm trying to read the few notes that I've made. I put, night, someone in the cabin. Thank you, Scott. I am a genius. Right, there's something in the cabin. And he gets up and kind of looks around. And in the living room is a thing called a coatimundi. Again, picture on the screen. There's a coatimundi, which is like a small fairy creature. And he manages to chase it out of the cabin. Somehow it's got in. But he manages to chase it out. That doesn't really go anywhere at all. It's the next day. He's at the hospital. His parents are fine now. And he fills them in on the night that he had where he was like scared of the coatimundi that's inside. And they're laughing about it because I don't know if the coatimundi are harmless or not, but he was like freaked out because he was worried that he was getting like attacked and stuff. He fills them all in on the curse, the skull, the quicksand, whatever, and they don't believe him about it being a curse. They're just like, look, we just had a lot of bad luck. The curse isn't real. But at this point, there's been so many delays on the expedition they were on and the dig that they were doing that they've kind of called it off. The team that arranged it have called it off because it's just delay after delay after delay. The rain season is about to start. They've just got no choice. They can't get done what they need to get done in time. So they call it all off, which means that Harry and his parents are going to start to go home the next day. But Harry, something starts to play on Harry's mind now. He's like, is it real? Was the curse real? I took the skull, all these bad things happened, put the skull back, Mum and Dad are fine now. But after talking to his parents and they were saying it's just a coincidence, the Fer-de-Lance is a poisonous snake, we were in their area, I fell down a temple that was old and falls apart. You know, these things happen, they're just bad coincidences. So Harry starts to get, especially with the coatimundi, I know I started a sentence and then stopped. To do that quite regularly. Especially with the coatimundi coming into the house after Harry put the skull back and the curse was meant to be over. He's now not sure if the curse is real. So he wants to know for sure. He's like, his mind can't get off the fact that he doesn't know. So he decides again that day to go back to the temple and take something else. Because he's such a smart kid. And this time he takes the jade necklace with the vulture on. Because he's an item that he wanted anyway. And he even says, curses, smirches. And he needs to know. He just can't get it out of his head. He's like obsessed with it now. He needs to know what's real and what's not. So he takes the pendant and leaves. And as he's walking back, he goes back to the plaza. There's a bit where he explores some of the temples. He climbs to this giant temple, like one that can sticks out above all the jungle, so you can see everywhere around all the different temples. It's kind of one that he mentions not everybody can climb up because there's various obstacles near the top. He sits up there and eats a sandwich or whatever and admires the view, and he's all like, this is a great place to be. And he climbs down the temple, explores a bit more, and begins to make his way back to the cabin, not the shack. And as he's making his way back, he gets hungry again. So he finds some nuts on some trees. Like, I don't really know much about food in the jungle, whether you can just eat stuff straight off a tree. I assume you probably could. You probably need to wash them first. But he sees this tree which grows nuts, so he picks off some of the nuts and starts to eat them. But as he's walking back to the cabin, things don't feel right. He begins to get weird feelings in his stomach. He begins to get dizzy. Things start to sway a bit. Things start to get blurry. Can't walk straight. His head's spinning a bit more. He's getting really hot. He's getting a fever. His tongue starts to swell up. He's like, oh my god, it's the curse. The curse is back. And he faints. There's a bit where he kind of comes to a little bit. Things are still blurry and all that, and he's still on the jungle floor, but there's someone standing over him. And he kind of wakes up in the hospital. His dad found him on the floor, sees he's having an allergic reaction to these nuts, and has taken him to the hospital where they treated him for the allergic reactions. Now, I've never had an allergic reaction. I've seen pictures of people who have, and it looks friggin' awful. Like the fact that your tongue swells up so much, and you can barely breathe, and your face can swell up, and your body can swell up. It just looks awful. Oh god, and having that in the middle of a jungle as well. Ugh. But he goes to the hospital where they treat him for the allergic reaction. But due to the time frame of where they are, the parents basically say they need to take him home because they've got a flight booked. It's in the middle of Guatemala. They just need to get out of here. So the doctor kind of makes him well enough to get on the plane, but he's still drugged out of his face. So there's quite a tense bit, really. I don't know if it was meant to be tense or not, but I found it quite tense, where basically the parents are putting Harry on the plane home, and he doesn't know if what's happened to him is because of the curse, and he figures if he gets on the plane and they fly back to wherever they're from. Where are they from? Let me have a quick look on the first few pages. It just says United States. Yeah, just as United States, doesn't say whereabouts. So he figures if he gets on the plane back to the United States with the cursed necklace, he's fucked, because you can't just fly back to Guatemala and then you're stuck with a curse. So like I said, there's quite a tense bit where he's still kind of struggling with the effects of the allergic reaction. His tongue's still swollen up, he can't talk, can't really move, he's that drugged out of his face from the doctor that he can't really, like I say, move much or get up or make much of a noise. And the parents are putting him on the plane, he's sat on the plane waiting to go, and he's trying to communicate with them to say, look, we can't leave, we've got a cursed necklace here. And he's scared he's scared if the plane goes off and they got this cursed necklace, the plane might crash, because we don't know the effects of the necklace and how far it goes and whatever. But at the end of the day, the mum nearly died, the dad went into a coma and may have died. He had an allergic reaction in the jungle. So he's just, there's like I said, there's a really tense moment where I could see it being a tense part on a film, where he's there drugged up on the plane and the plane's about to go and he's like, we can't leave, blah blah blah. And in every other book that I would have read, on a very typical young adult goosebumpsy book, I can put money on the fact the plane he would have made some sort of noise or sign and they would have got off the plane, or that maybe the parents would have put the bag in the overhead compartment and the necklace fell out and they were like, oh my god. I don't know. But not in Shivers, guys. Like, if you've ever listened to any of my reviews so far, particularly A Ghostly Playmate, Shivers takes things in a lot of different directions than most kids' books do. If you haven't read A Ghostly Playmate, read it. It's so dark. But yeah, on this book, contrary to what I expected to happen, the plane goes. The plane takes off. They leave Guatemala. They go back to the United States with this necklace. And the book kind of ends where he's saying that, they're in the United States now. Now and again, bad things happen. Maybe he loses something. Maybe he falls over. Maybe he trips. Maybe they break something. Every now and again, all these bad things start to happen. But the whole time they do, he wonders, do they happen because of the curse? Or do they just happen because I'm clumsy? Because things happen in life. Every time he falls over or breaks something, he gets scared. Is this the curse? Is this just me? He never finds out. So like I say, they go back to the US with this potentially cursed item. He doesn't manage to contact his parents to stop the plane and go and return it to the temple. And like I say, it ends where he was saying that all these things are happening in life because these things do happen, and he has no idea whether it's the curse or not. Is the curse real? He doesn't know. But he does vow that one day when he's old enough, when he's rich enough, or whatever, he's going to go back to Guatemala, to Tikal, to that particular temple, and he's going to return the jade necklace to its rightful place when he's older. And that's kind of how the book ends. And I normally talk about the end of the book later on, but I'm going to do it now just while it's fresh in my head. But in some ways I really liked the end of this book, because it wasn't like a twist. Because you might, like in a Goosebumps book, he would have maybe returned home and there would have been like this massive accident that would have proved that the curse was real, or they would have returned the necklace. Maybe one of the parents would have picked something up as well, which meant the curse carried on, whatever. But this didn't really have a twist. In some ways, the twist was that there was no twist. The twist was, like I say, in every normal kids' book, they would have had some reason to get off that plane. Which really shocks me when I read this, that they didn't get off the plane. He wanted to communicate and he just couldn't. And so the plane takes off and they fly back to the US. And that's it, you know. He doesn't know if the curse is real. We don't know if the curse is real or not. My money is on the fact that it is real. Maybe not. Maybe the necklace isn't cursed, but the skeleton is, because it's the skull of the emperor. It's, you know, like a vital piece of that ruler. I don't know. My view on it is the curse was real. Maybe the necklace just isn't, like I say, because people trip and fall over all the time. I'm a clumsy bastard. I break things more often than I'm happy to admit. But I applaud this book for going down a route which I would never have expected. They didn't pull out this great twist, even though it was tense on the plane because you didn't want it to take off because you didn't know it was going to crash. You know, it was realistic. He wasn't going to have this momentous fight against an allergic reaction. He wasn't just going to break out of the sedation that he was under and inform his parents, because that's not realistic. You know, he can't do it. The plane takes off and they just don't know whether it's real or not. And so I kind of was really impressed because it was not what I expected to happen. There was a few things in this book that I didn't expect to happen, but I'll talk about that when I get to the review. Open plot points. All I've wrote down is the curse real? There's no definitive answer either way, which again, I like because that's realistic. Because, like, if you read up on the internet about all these digs and exhibitions that they do in Egypt or India, wherever, in the Middle East, they do these things, and they uncover skeletons, ancient cities, whatever. You hear all these stories about how they're cursed, how members of the team started dying, or those freak accidents, or the swarms of locusts in Egypt when they're doing these digs, whatever. You hear about it all the time in movies, in books, on the news, and there's never any proof in either direction whether a curse is real or not. And so the fact that this book didn't answer that, I really kind of appreciate because it's realistic. I didn't think I would like it because sometimes with these books being kids' books, I like specific answers. But reading it as an adult, I was like, you know what, I get it. I'm okay with that because whilst it would have been maybe fun to see like a big curse in action, this is following what happens in real life. Like, the locals always talk about curses and myths and legends and how they're not going to disturb any of the, you know, ruins or whatever. But realistically, we're never going to know if they're real or not. As much as people can tell us that these bad things happen because you disturbed a desecrated area or just opened a tomb which you shouldn't have opened, or a sarcophagus, you know, there's no definitive proof either way. I think maybe as a kid reading this book I might be a little bit disappointed because it didn't explain it, but as an adult I can appreciate where the author was coming from because, like I say, it's realistic, and so for that I'm okay with. I've decided from now on I'm not necessarily going to talk about the worst cliffhangers. I might mention the best ones if there's one in particular that stands out, but I might just talk about them in general, unless, like I say, the specific ones I want to talk about, because cliffhangers are big parts of these books. There's no bad ones in particular on this book that I remember, which in some ways means that they're all good cliffhangers. Like I say, in a couple, I think it's happened in a couple of Shivers books now. All the cliffhangers are really good. I think that happened in a Ghostly Playmate. I'm pretty sure Ghostly Playmate had all good cliffhangers. What I mean by that is that all cliffhangers had a reason, a consequence. They weren't fake outs like Goosebumps often do. So the dad falling down the temple, the mum got bitten by a snake, the Harry falling into the quicksand, him deciding to return the skull to its rightful place. All these various things that happen at the end of a chapter, they were like, you know what, I want to read on, I want to see what happens next. It's not like, ooh, something grabbed my ankle. Oh, by the way, it was just a plant. Sorry for that moment of silence. I'm just taking a big mouthful of Coke. The drink, not the drug. So yeah, I was impressed because, like I say, from what I can remember and what I've had a quick flick through to check, all the cliffhangers seem to have a point, a purpose to further on the story. So for that, I approve. Cover review, the cover. The cover's okay. I mean, I've mentioned it before in other reviews. I like covers that represent the book. So I don't like it if the cover has nothing to do with the story that happens. Someone's just read maybe a paragraph or a synopsis of the story and goes, right, I'm going to draw a cover. I don't really know what it's about, but I'm going to draw a cover. And they kind of don't really mesh with the story at hand. I'm trying to think of one that I read recently that was, for example, Creep from the Deep, which is Goosebumps Horrorland number 2. The cover of that one is an eel crashing through a porthole window of a submarine. That happens in about 3 sentences of the book. It's a dream, it's not real, and so it's not really representative of the whole overarching story, which was about zombie pirates, which would have made an amazing cover. So this book does have a representative cover. It's got the Mayan temples, it's got a scorpion, it's got the Mayan ruler's skull with his headdress on, and it's kind of glowing green to emphasise a curse. So in that ways, I like the cover because I can read this cover and get an idea of what it's about. It's about Mayans. It's about maybe there's skeletons and the skulls in it at some point. So I can get that. However, the cover is a little bit boring. Like, it's not the most exciting picture. Maybe I would have done a cover of, I don't know, maybe let me think. What would I have done? I try and do this quite regularly when I read a book. I don't like the cover. I've mentioned it in quite a few so far. I might do a separate video on it one day. But what I would have done for this one, maybe an image of the temple, the inside of the temple, of the room that Harry uncovers with the remains inside it. So I would have the Mayan ruler with his headdress, his jewel necklace, the skeleton or the skull or whatever, and maybe you'll have like scorpions crawling on the floor, maybe some snakes, picture of a wild animal in the corner maybe, and again having the skull's eyes glowing I'm okay with, because it kind of symbolises the curse. But yeah, the cover's alright. It's, like I say, it's representative of the book. You know what you're getting from the story. From the cover, it's just not the most exciting picture. I apologise for that. I can feel myself speeding up, which I'm just trying to relax. You got nothing to do today, just chill. Story review. Like I say, going into it, I wasn't keen because of its similarities to A Ghastly Shade of Green, which wasn't my favourite Shivers book, because it was like another jungle-y rainforest one. However, I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it for the fact that I got a really good picture from the author of the setting, the area, the animals, the danger, when it talks about the various things that he saw when he was exploring the rainforest, the jungle, the different insects and the sounds that you could hear, the ground that he was walking on, the fact that there's quicksand, there's animals that left him alone, there's animals that chased him, there's animals that were dangerous, there's animals that weren't dangerous. So I got a really good image of where he was, as well as that I liked the curse section. I'm always a fan of like mummy stories. Mummy stories are some of my favourite ones. I like curses and people dealing with the curses and figuring out how to solve them. And like I say, I like the fact that we never know whether the curse is necessarily real, although my belief is that maybe the first part of the curse was real. Once he took the skull, maybe the fact that he returned the skull but took the necklace, they kind of let him off. I don't know. I like the fact that there was good twists in the book. Real danger twists as well. Like the dad falling off a temple and being put into a coma is quite serious. And the mum being bitten by a poisonous snake and almost dying from that. It's really putting the not even that the main character in a serious danger, but it's giving him real, what's the word? Real reasons to fight, I guess. I can't think of a better term, but I know there is one. There's real serious things happening here. So it's not like, oh, I fell down, or oh, someone, I don't know, broke into the cabin, or I fell in some mud, I got stuck for a little bit, but then I got myself out of it, which some books might do. It was like, no, my parents are dying, actually dying. I've almost died in quicksand, got bitten by scorpions, and saved by these weird spirit things. There's real serious kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? I can picture it. I don't know. If I can think of it, I'll put the word onto the screen at any time. Now, if no word appeared now, I never remembered the word. But there's a phrase that I'm looking for, and yeah, I don't know. But there was real things that were going on, like real bad repercussions of this potential curse. And so it made the story a lot more tense-filled, you know, because he had real things to be invested in. Whereas I thought maybe for a kid's book, maybe some small bad things would happen, but nothing major. Maybe the expedition would get called off, I don't know. But he had a real reason to be scared and to return the school. But then there was also reasons for him to doubt what was going on. Because this is the jungle. Bad things do happen. People do get bitten by snakes. So it made sense why he was doubting himself. Even though it was a little bit like, oh God, they're just trying to not drag it out, but it's just written so that the story doesn't end, which I'm fine with. I also understood why he did it. Like, there was a good reason to doubt what happened. And he's like me, I would like to know if it was real or not. I'd be scared, but I'm similar to him. Like, if I've got something in my head and I don't get an answer to it, I get quite annoyed. So I'm similar to him. I would have wanted to know if it was real or not. So I like that. I've got to admit, in terms of the side characters, the only one that had any influence was Nevins, who was kind of the teammate who kept appearing at the hospital and stuff and offering Harry a place to stay. I had a feeling that Nevins was going to turn out to be evil. I don't know why, but the fact that he knew Harry and his dad were in an undiscovered temple and doing something in there, which is where the dad got injured, and now he knew where the temple was. The fact that he kind of kept trying to get Harry to stay at the cabin where he was staying, didn't want to leave him alone. I just had a feeling that maybe at some point, similar to how, like in the Deep Trouble books, where they have quite real life investigations, one of the helpers or whatever tends to always turn out to be evil. I mean, most of these books actually, there's like a side character who's around a lot. Maybe 6 out of 10 times they turn out to be evil. I had a feeling that maybe Nevins was going to try and steal out the investigation, the discovery from Harry and his family. Maybe he would have become part of a curse because he would have gone in and stole some stuff maybe. I don't know, I just had a feeling he was going to do something bad, but he never did, which again I applaud the writer for, because for me there seemed to be like a lot of signs that Nevins was going to be up to no good. But I don't know if that's just because I've read so many of these books in the past, I watched a lot of these films, that I'm just expecting it to happen. But he never, never did anything bad. He was just a friendly teammate. What else happened in this book? Yeah, I don't think there's much more for me to say. Like I say, I like the atmosphere. I like the location, which I wasn't looking forward to. But this was so different from a ghastly shade of green, which wasn't my favourite, but I think I don't know why, I just didn't really connect with that one, whereas I did this one. Really enjoyed it. I felt like I was, because I picture things in my head quite a lot when I read. Some people don't, some people just read it for what it is. I get quite lost in it in my head, and got quite a good imagination, so I can see these things. So I could see where he was, I could experience it with him, which sounds really weird. I like the twists. I like the fact that I expected some big dramatic thing at the end, which didn't happen, which some people I don't think will like, but I did, because I wasn't expecting it. So yeah, overall, love this book. Harry was an alright character. He made decisions that I would have made, so for that I don't really blame him for going and getting the necklace. Will we ever find out if the curse is real? No, because Shivers doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, in some ways it's nice to have one that's kind of unexplained, but not unexplained in a way like this. How am I going to say this? Some books that I've read don't explain things, and it's really annoying because it's like you're just expecting us to believe something so far fetched without any sort of reasons. Whereas this one felt like true to life. Like like I said before, these things happen. People investigate unexplained or undiscovered places, dig up ruins, remains, and then bad things start to happen. Some people say it's coincidence, some people say it's curse, and that happens in real life today. So I'm fine with it not being explained because it's true to life. But yeah, like I say, I love this book. It kind of slowed down towards the end after he put the skull back and took the necklace, because there was the whole thing with the nuts and then the plane, but I liked that. Rating. To rate this book, I was really impressed. Liked most things that happened in it. So I think I'm going to give it an... Oh, this is a tough one. I normally write down ratings before I do the reviews, like I said last time, but I seem to keep forgetting to do it. I'm going to give it an A-, because I just really enjoyed it. Yeah, an A-. So guys, that is my review of The Curse in the Jungle. My next Shivers book, like I mentioned earlier on, is going to be called Camp Fear. But the next book that I'm going to review will be my first Goosebumps Series 2000. I'm not going to tell you which one, you'll have to wait and see for that one. But if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If any of you have listened to my Shivers reviews so far and have never read them, please go out and buy some. Particularly the ones that I've reviewed, if you've listened to any of them. I'd be interested to know what you thought. If you'd like to go out and read them, give me your impressions, that'd be really good. But yeah, so that's me done for today, guys. I'll be doing my next review shortly. I might do it this afternoon. See how much energy I've got once I've edited this one. But yeah, I hope you're all taking care of yourselves and enjoy this video. And until next, guys, that didn't make sense. That wasn't English. Until next time, guys, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.